You mentioned at the beginning the geopolitics, or the conflict, Cold War, whatever you like, between the United States and China, and that it's wrong to understand that conflict as a sort of traditional geopolitical game, but instead as a conflict between two superpower cloud fiefs. So please can you talk about that a little bit more? And I guess I'd ask you glibly as well, who's winning that war?
Okay. Before I answer the second part, let me explain what I mean. The rise of China is an American story, in the same way that the creation of the European Union is an American project. We Europeans like to think that we had a fantastic idea to end the war in Europe, and we had that idea, but the EU would never have been created without Americans planning and executing the plan for the creation of the EU. Similarly, the rise of China, Deng Xiaoping played an important role by opening up, but what happened essentially was this. There was a dark deal, I call it in the book, between the United States ruling class and the Chinese Communist Party. Industry would shift from the United States manufacturing to China. The Chinese capitalists would be exporting to the United States. They would be getting paid in dollars that the United States would have to print, because the United States was a deficit country, remains a deficit country. But that deficit would be sustainable. Why? Because all the profit, the dollar profits, or the vast majority of the dollar profits of the Chinese capitalists would go to Wall Street and be invested in real estate, in shares, in derivatives, and in bonds. And in other words, a large part of the Chinese profits from selling to the United States would be financing the American government. That's a synergy. They are accomplices. The Chinese Communist Party and the American rentier capitalists are partners. So why are they now moving apart and threatening the world with Armageddon, with a new Cold War that may end up into a thermonuclear war? That question was on my mind for a very long time, and I didn't have an answer to it. Until I noticed WeChat. WeChat is an application that belongs to Tencent, a conglomerate, a big tech megalith in China. And I realized that the West doesn't have anything like that. Imagine if there was an app, and by the way, that's what Elon Musk wants to do when he calls an everything app. That's WeChat. Imagine there is an app that allows you to send messages, watch TikTok-like videos, watch movies, listen to music, everything that Spotify, Netflix, Instagram, WhatsApp, Signal, and so on do. Everything in one app, plus free payments. You don't have that now here. You need to download the application of Lloyds Bank, of Barclays Bank, of Bank of America, and so on. They charge you an arm and a leg to make payments, or they charge proprietors, shopkeepers, an arm and a leg. Apple Pay, they charge huge rents for making these transactions. WeChat, free payments. And you can have a WeChat app. All you need is a bank account somewhere in China, in one. So suddenly, this amazing deal that the United States had with China, but also with the European Union. A little aside, when the euro came out, everybody was saying, oh, this is great because we Europeans will be able to compete with the dollar. The exorbitant privilege of the dollar and the supremacy of the dollar is going to be challenged by the euro. That never happened and never will happen. Why? Because if you're a German industrialist, if Mercedes-Benz, or a Dutch industrialist, you don't want the euro to usurp the power of the dollar, because your money, most of your profits, come from selling to the Americans. Now, the Americans are a deficit country. The only reason why you sell to them is because they have this trade deficit, which they cover with dollars, and the only reason why you accept dollars is because of the exorbitant privilege of the dollar. So you don't want the euro to undermine the power of the dollar as a European capitalist, right? That's the greatest strength of the American dollar is foreign capitalists, not the CIA, not the American military, not Biden, none of these people. It is foreign capitalists who freak out at the thought that the dollar will lose its authority and power. That applies to the Chinese capitalists who do not want to see the Chinese currency, overtake the American one. But the Chinese, because they have, due to the power of the Chinese Communist Party, fused their big tech with their big banks, something that's not happening in the United States. Wall Street will never allow Silicon Valley to go anywhere near the payment system, right? So they are at loggerheads, big tech and Silicon Valley. Sorry, Silicon Valley and Wall Street. In China, they're fused, they're one thing. That's why you have WeChat. Add to that the central bank digital currency, which allows you and me, foreigners as well, to have a digital wallet in China with free transactions, in one, of course, right? Suddenly, the predominance of the dollar comes into question. The Trump administration started the Cold War by freezing Huawei out. In my estimation, it's because of that. Nothing to do with Huawei posing a national security threat or anything like that. And then you have the war in Ukraine and the confiscation of $400 billion owned by the Russian central bank by the West, primarily the United States. I'm not going to start a conversation about whether they should have done that or not. All I'm saying is that if you are a Saudi Arabian prince, an Indonesian oligarch, and of course a Russian, but even a Ukrainian oligarch, you never know what happens after the war, right? And you see that these Americans have no qualm confiscating your money, hundreds of billions of dollars. Then you think twice before you put all your money in dollars. So this superhighway way of payments, of free payments that the Chinese have created, which they didn't even want to use themselves, because they want the American dollar, because their capitalist profits come from the American dollar. Suddenly, it sees a lot of traffic. And Wall Street, they're shitting their pants, excuse my French.
It's welcome.
Because they think, oh my God, here we have an alternative to the dollar system. I think this is what's underpinning the new Cold War. When Biden announced that essentially what he told the Chinese in the fall of 2021 was, we will prevent you from becoming a technologically advanced country. When you ban the sale of advanced chips to a country like China, you're saying you will stay technologically backward. Well, that's a declaration of war. Technological war, but war, economic war. So they start decoupling themselves, and they start putting more emphasis on this alternative payment system. So it's a clash of two cloud thieves, two cloud techno-feudalisms, a clash between two payment systems, both of them digital, both of them living on the cloud, one dollar denominated, the other one denominated. And where is Britain? Where is the European Union? Nowhere. We are utterly insignificant.
It's a reassuring place to be, isn't it? So
I don't mind being insignificant. It's just that, our politicians have not caught on to that.
About what's actually happening.
Yeah, they keep thinking up, making Britain great again, the European Union that is going to become a significant force if we integrate more and we have more countries in the Balkans and Ukraine and so on. Rubbish. We are nobodies. It is China on the one hand, with the coalescence of the BRICS around it, and the United States on the other hand. That's a very unstable world to live in, and doesn't augur very well for the European continent, including Britain.